So welcome everybody, and let's start in 1991. So in 1991, I was 31 years old, and I had two small children, 1.5 and 5 years old. I had a regular job, a good paying job. I was a sales rep for a company, and that was my first introduction to freight. So I'd been a sales rep for 6 months. And I was working for them, and they promised me an increase. And the increase didn't materialize, and I was quite upset about that. So, because you don't make a promise and then not keep it. Imagine how disappointed I was when I looked at my pay slip and no increase. So I called the boss and I said, no increase. And he said, no, nobody's getting increases. There were about 5 or 6 reps. Nobody's getting increases. You can get your target, which is XYZ, which was completely unattainable, and then you'll get an increase. So I thought, to hell with that. I know how well I did for this company. I'd always wanted to be an entrepreneur, so I thought I'll start my own company, except I didn't have any finance. So I approached an existing customer of the company, a Mr. Ismail Patel. He had a business called Venus Clothing. And I said, I need 2 delivery vehicles to start my business. So I want you to sign surety for the vehicles, and I'm going to start this courier company. So he didn't burst out laughing. He actually listened to my story, and he said, great, I'll sign surety for the 2 vehicles, but I'll take a 50% share of the company, and you'll move to my premises. So he had this backyard garage, rundown premises in Observatory, 39 Troll Road, strewn with car parts and cars, and it wasn't very professional. But I painted it and I made it look pretty, and to have some semblance of professionalism. And people that did come in there would say, oh, it looks nice, and that made me feel a bit better. There wasn't a toilet. You had to go down some stairs, and then there was a toilet without a light. And once you closed the door, it was completely dark. And they were horrible premises, and they were miles and miles away from where I lived. So I'd have to go tearing in peak traffic to get there, and tearing home to fetch the kids from the creche. So I started the business on the 1st of July, and it was called Cape Couriers. So on the 1st of July, 1991, no customers, no finance, no business knowledge at all, and what was the other thing? No industry knowledge. I didn't know anything. For those in the freight industry, after a few months, somebody said to me, I see you don't manifest your freight. So I said, what's a manifest? I was clueless. Now, the freight industry was and is very much an interconnected, interwoven, buddy, contact, who knows who system. So it's all about who you know. And once you've got those contacts, you can establish your business. I didn't have any contacts. I didn't know who to ask for anything. So I wanted to do local deliveries. So I had this idea of people wouldn't want to do their own shopping or stand in a queue for things, much like Takealot does today. But it was 30 years ahead of its time, so that didn't work. But I did local deliveries, and then I did upcountry deliveries. So you piggyback. So in freight, you piggyback. Everybody works together. Not everybody, but the people that you get on with will help you, and you help them. So I would then piggyback and outsource my freight. So with any new business, there are tremendous risks. So you can imagine somebody that doesn't have any business experience, and people can pick it up. They know that you ignorant. So Jack, we've just started on 1991. When Cape Courier started, we started in observatory, in very small premises with no customers and 2 buckies, but no business in 1991, in observatory. So customers take advantage of you and it's very stressful. So I had, for Mr. Patel, for his 50% shareholding, got R1 million. Several years later, I had to buy 50% of my business back that I'd started for R1 million. And what did he invested? He signed surety for 2 vehicles that I paid for, and he signed for a small overdraft so that I'd have salaries for 3 months. The rest was my hard work. But that was the level of determination, and I was driven by success. Failure was not an option. So rather than close the business down and start up under another name, I kept the name Cape Couriers and I bought him out for R1 million. Not a bad deal, I think. So anyway, so back to 1991, the early days, it's very stressful. I've got no clients. So I'm going around observatory from door to door with business cards saying, this is my business card, I've got a courier company around the corner, please will you support me? So here I am, brand new, going around to businesses, my business card, hi, I'm Delia, and I've got a courier company. Oh, and how long have you been in business? Oh no, we've just started. Oh, okay, well maybe you should call me in 6 months then, if you're still around. So, but you know, I wasn't daunted. I called them in 6 months, that you can be sure of. So anyway, so I got a few clients on board. My turnover was 5,000 in the first month, and my overheads were 20,000. So it might not sound significant, but remember this is 1991. So, you know, it's relative. So the business built up, but it was extremely stressful. And I had to go racing home. We lived in Kailsriver at the time. So I'd race along the N1 in the emergency lane and get fines to get to the creche on time to fetch my kids. And the hours got longer and later, and I had this narcissistic, abusive husband. So he would drive past the kids' creche in the afternoons just after 4, and he wouldn't fetch the kids. So then I'd leave at 5:45 to get there by 6 and get there at 6:30, and the kids would be the last in the creche sitting there with the lady saying, you're late, and I'd say, I'm terribly sorry. And I said, but you've got to help me. You've got to fetch the kids. You drive past here anyway. And he said, no, that's not my job. And that was that. So eventually it got to the point where he did have to fetch the kids, but he never let me forget it. I paid for that. I've got to fetch the kids. And then I had to have supper prepared, because when he got home, the supper had to be prepared. So I had to get home, do my paperwork, prepare the supper, put it into plates, and have it ready for tomorrow. And then I would do my paperwork. Because remember, in those days, there are no computers. So everything's done manually. And every parcel generates a document. And there's several copies of the document. And that generates other paperwork. So you're busy working with paper all the time, and it's money. So any mistake on one of those pieces of paper is going to cost you money. A small mistake. So then I used to do my costing manually at night. And, you know, initially it was 10 weighbles, then it got to 100 weighbles, then it was 200 weighbles. So I'd sit there at night with a calculator doing my costing. So it was incredibly stressful. And unfortunately, the marriage didn't work out because of the pressure on the job, and also I wasn't going to compromise, because I couldn't stop. I had to make this business successful. And many people at the company where I worked said, and understandably so, they said, oh, she'll never make it. She'll never make it. What does she know about freight? And that got back to me. And there were a couple of men as well that said, oh, I'll close you down. I'll close you down in 3 months. And so when I realized that it wasn't worth it, the stress wasn't worth it, you're sacrificing all your time that you can never recover, and you're not making money, you're living in a state of anxiety, you can't sleep at night, and I realized it's time to chuck in the towel. And then I thought of all those people that said, she'll never make it, she'll never make it. And I thought, okay, I'll make it and I'll show you. So I wouldn't give up, and regardless of the stress and the trauma, I continued. And then I managed to build the business up. We moved to bigger premises from these awful premises, and then I got more vehicles. I established a reputation with a bank, and I got more vehicles. I did a lot of advertising. The brand became prominent, and people also knew it was a lady, which in those days was, I think it's nascent. I looked up the word, and I wanted to say nascent, but I think it's nascent. So that's like new, novelty, new in the industry. It wasn't the norm to have a lady who ran her own courier company or who started it from scratch and built it up to those levels. And I'm the only person that I know of in South Africa that did that. So it was no mean feat. Thank you. But you know, at the time, you take it in your stride. You don't care. You just want to succeed, you know. I didn't even think of that. So being totally male-dominated, and remember, you piggyback, so I've got to deal with some of these men. And they were so rude, pejorative in their comments, condescending, sexist. And I was having a phone call with one chap, and he said to me, you bugger around with a few parcels of air freight, and you bugger around with a few parcels of road freight, and you think you're in business. So I said, well, I'm just trying to run a business and earn a living. And I didn't let it upset me, but that's the way they would talk to you. And if you complained, or you complained about the service levels, they'd say, hey, I'll close your account. Yeah. I don't want to say the name, but this gentleman, a parcel disappeared. Parcel's gone. The client wants 10,000 Rand from me. So 2 weeks later, they can't find the parcel, no apology, it's gone. One of my staff saw this particular box crushed on the floor. Somebody had driven over it with a forklift. That's what happened to my box. No apology. That's the level of service that you used to get. Nobody took you seriously. You didn't have a reputation, you didn't have any buying power, so you just had to toddle along. And sip of water. This same gentleman was having a conversation with me one day, and he said, oh, but you've got T&A. So I said, what's T&A? I don't mean to offend anybody, but this is what he said. He said tits and ass. That's how he spoke to me. And I just took it on the chin, and I thought, okay, whatever. And fortunately, the industry is not like that anymore. But there were numerous incidents like that. So this gentleman said, you can't afford to pay me. He complained to someone at the office, and I called him and I said, hey, it's December. I'm actually at home, and I can pay you. It's not a lot of money. And he said, oh, you can't afford to pay me. Stress and aggression. And I said, actually, I can afford to pay you, and I'm going to come and pay you now at your office with a check. Because in those days, it was checks. So I drove to his office. I wouldn't allow him to intimidate me, and I presented the check. And he said, it's not going to go through the bank. And I said, well, of course it'll go through the bank. And then I said, what's the fax number? Because remember, in those days, it's fax. No cell phones, only fax. So I said, fax number, call the bank, can you use your phone? Hello, bank, this is the check number, send a fax to this number to say that the check will be honored. Fax came through, and he still carried on shouting and fighting. And he got so angry that he grabbed the desk and he tried to throw it on me. Yes. And I would not allow him to intimidate me. I said, I'm not afraid of you. You will not intimidate me. I will not allow you to intimidate me. Happened on many occasions that I would say to them, you're not going to intimidate me. But anyway, that was part and parcel of the job in those days. So moving on. So we're getting more trucks, we've got finance, we've moved to bigger premises. The kids have to be fetched from Kales River every day, come through to Maitland, they drive me insane. They scream and shout, and they build houses and castles with boxes, and I scream at them, but at least they are under some sort of supervision. And then I employed somebody who was 12 years my junior as an operations manager. And he was a gentleman by the name of Rian Klaassen. So he seemed reasonably intelligent, and I had somebody that could help me because I didn't really have anybody that could help me. It was chief cook, bottle washer, debtors, creditors, cash flow, client liaison, sales, you name it. It was really a one-man show. So that was at least some help. And just quickly, back to 91, when I started the business, I had 7 staff, 2 vehicles, 1 motorbike, the premises that I had to pay for, and no customers, not even one. So that's how I started, because I wanted to have the presence. I wanted to say to people, but we are big, we've got offices, we've got vehicles, we can do your work. We might be new, but we're strong. But that was a big mistake because the overheads were too high. So you constantly on the back foot, robbing robbing Peter to pay Paul. So back to 1996, we're in big premises, and Rian's working for me, and I've got lots of staff, and a couple of trucks and buckies, and it's busy. And a gentleman approached me, John. John said, I want you to invest in my business. I'm a software developer, and there's a niche in the freight industry for a software program that people won't have to do things manually anymore. This program will be called Parcel Perfect, and it will automate the freight system. So I'm going to use Cape Couriers as a guinea pig, but it's going to cost you 70,000 Rand. Now 70,000 Rand in 1996 was a hell of a lot of money. I mean, 200, 250 today maybe. So nobody's got that kind of cash flow, and if they do, they're not going to give it to you to develop a software program. However, I did, and not being familiar with computers, I said to Rian, I'm far too busy to help with this. You help John and give him whatever he needs and let him design his program. I'm far too busy. So that was a bit of a disadvantage, not being familiar, because by then computers, were taking over. So that business became Parcel Perfect, and today it's a very big company, internationally recognized and used. And no credit to me or credit to Parcel Perfect and John, but just I thought it interesting for people that are industry to know that that's how Parcel Perfect started. So 97, I opened an office in Johannesburg and started off very small, grew the branch, and started open other branches. I opened up Durban with trucks and buckies, and eventually we'd go on to open up in the other main centres, such as Bloemfontein, Port Elizabeth, George, and East London eventually. So your overheads are very, very high, and you need to turn around a lot of money just to break even. But I managed my business with cash flow. The financial audits weren't ever up to date. The first auditor, when the business was very small, I don't know how she did that. It was Kessel Feinstein too. But this lady didn't bring over the balance, the opening balances correctly. And, accounting was not my strong side, because that's why you have your books audited and you have an accountant. And then the accountants never got it right. The financials weren't correct. I didn't know how to fix it, but I just made sure that it was good enough for the bank to finance vehicles. And then I would manage my cash flow by checking my creditors, checking my debtors, knowing exactly what's coming in and exactly what's going out. So I had full control. So in 2000, Rian and I were married, and I had to pay for the wedding because he was impecunious. By that stage, I was already supporting his family. So perhaps it's important to mention at this stage something called complex post-traumatic stress. So doing the research for the talk, I came across this complex post-traumatic stress. So what that is in your childhood, if you've been exposed to some kind of trauma, violence, your emotional needs haven't been met as a child, alcoholism, you didn't receive the nurturing that you should have. This will actually affect your personality and cause stress, anxiety problems in the future. And I was a people pleaser, didn't have firm boundaries, and generous to a fault, would give indiscriminately. And I think this relates to the complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So, because people see that you're generous and then they take advantage of you, and that's what Rian's family did. So I was supporting his family. So then in 2001, checks became obsolete and everybody was moving over to internet banking. So yet again, I said to Rian, it's so much easier. I'm too busy for this. Why don't you just do the internet banking? You deal with the bank and then they'll teach you how to do it. So it's exactly the same, except that he does the transfers instead of me signing the checks. But I had already given him a 25% share of the business when we got married. So moving on, I was very successful, and I had properties and the big flashy cars, which are completely insignificant. But when you work hard and you sacrifice all that time, you think it's okay to spoil yourself. The business had also was worth, had a value. So, and I had a big overdraft because I was preemptive. I said, don't wait until you need assistance from the bank. Have your overdraft now, because anything could happen. A big client cannot pay you, and you've got a bit of surplus. So that was my line of thinking. So then in 2002, Rian lost his father, and he started gambling on the internet. So this internet gambling was something new to me, and I thought it's benign. It's what harm can it do? It's like a hobby. It's like playing cards. And he said it relieves my trauma, the loss of my father, and it just keeps my mind occupied. So I thought, okay, well, that's a good thing. It's like a hobby. It's like reading a book. And it's perfectly innocent. But he became more and more on his computer, and always busy working hard on the laptop. And yeah, these are all red flags, but you know, the brain, once it goes into denial, you can't do anything about it. So then my father got very ill. My father got cancer, and I was effectively not working for about 2 years because I had to take time off to be with him and spend quality time with him, support my parents, and my mom took it very badly. So I obviously wasn't going to focus on the company. Came back into the business in about 2006, and Rian's always going on business trips, and he's gambling, never losing. Gamblers don't lose. The heavy gamblers, no, they don't lose. They always win or they break even. So he was just gambling with small money, and sometimes he'd win, and you know, yeah, and I break even. And if there was a win, then he'd show off about it. I remember we were having a braai one evening, and he said, yeah, 190 grand, eh? And he was so proud of this. And little did I know where this would lead to. So then he said, why don't you come with me to the casino? So initially I was very bored, but you know, you play a few coins on the small machines and then you graduate. So it's like going from the plonk to the quality wines. You graduate and you go to the bigger denomination machines, and then the casino reels you in. So you get, and they're a business. They also need to make a living. You can't blame the casino if you've got an addiction problem. But of course, Rian wasn't addicted. No, he was breaking even. And so the 50 Rand machines, 20 Rands went to 50 Rands, 50 Rands went to 100 Rands. You can lose 10,000 Rand in the blink of an eye. So I realized that we were on a hiding to nowhere, and he was dipping into the kitty, into the business to win money back. Because when you lose, you want to win it back. So unbeknown to me, gambling can be highly addictive. So when you win, it triggers the endorphins and dopamine. So you literally have a high, the same high that a drug addict would get. And when you lose money, of course, it triggers stress, adrenaline, cortisol. You become anxious, and then you want to win the money back. Because let's say you've invested 10,000 Rand in this machine, and you think, okay, it's going to pay. I'll get my money back. And I could see what was happening, and I said, listen, this is not working, so you're not going to gamble anymore. So promise me that you will never go into a casino ever again. I promise, he said. And I trusted him implicitly. It was my husband, and I believed him. But his personality had changed, and he was always busy on his computer, very stressed and anxious. And I would say, but what's wrong? And he would say, oh, no, it's my back pain. And I thought, shame, this poor man, you know. I was stressing about his back, and I'd phone my friends and say, oh, I'm so worried about him. Phone my mom and say, oh, he's in so much pain. And I think now that was his excuse. Because remember, all this is changing your personality. So in 2009, I still had a premonition about this. I got a feeling that on the 23rd of May, something was going to happen. Craig was in Australia, and I phoned Craig and I said, Craig, something's going to happen on the 23rd of May. This is like December. I said, I don't know what it is, but I know something's going to happen. And I told my mom, and I told all my friends. And 23rd of May arrived, and nothing happened. So I thought, oh, cool, strange. Anyway, it's uneventful. But the bank manager had made an appointment to come and see me. And he said, I'd rather see you alone, so I'll come to your house. So I said, sure, Saki, no problem. And coincidentally, on that day, Rian stayed at home. And he wasn't invited, but he gate crashed the meeting. So Saki said to him, Rian, I see you've asked for more credit on your business card. So he said, yes, I travel a lot and I need more credit. Quite adamant. So Saki said, he stood up and he said, and he had a pack of bank statements and he threw them onto the table like this. He said, this is not a business expense. This is not a business expense. And Rian made a grab for the papers, but I got there first. So I looked at all these transactions, and it's got little stars and dots and little funny things so that you know it's going to a casino. And I was horrified. So Saki stormed off. He said, I thought you knew. And I said, no, I didn't know. And then Rian tried to placate me, and I was inconsolable because my golden rule was you keep a good reputation with a bank. Don't mess with a bank because you need to prove to your creditors that you are good for the money. You need to be able to finance vehicles, and that's the right ethical thing to do. Who wants a bad rating with your bank? I mean, nobody in business. So that now had been destroyed. So I was devastated. I can't tell you what that feels like. It's like the bottom has fallen out of your world, because here's this man that you trusted implicitly, and he's stolen from you. He's lied to you. The very same day that I cashed out my son's education policies and put it into the bank to help the cash flow, he took the money out and he gambled with it. Unconscionable. So you can imagine things were very strained, and life wasn't the same after that. I actually sunk into a deep depression. And so, like any good man, he called in the troops. He called in the cavalry, and he went to Oudtshoorn to fetch his mum for backup. So his mom came to my house, and they sat there, chain smoking, in my face for 2 weeks, and telling me that I should forgive him. And his mom wouldn't speak directly to me, she would speak in the third person, and she would say, Marian, ek dink Delia moet vir jou vergewe. Ja, Rian. And it was bizarre. And she would say, Rian, you've done a lot for Delia. You've been a good husband, and I think she should forgive you. And I said, 700,000 rand in 3 days. You stole 700,000 rand in 3 days. There it is, black and white. No, it can't be that much. That's impossible. I said, well, add it up. Okay, but I can fix this. So, yeah, life wasn't the same after that, but I felt powerless to take my business back. What would anybody else do? Say to him, listen, bud, you're out of the business. I'm the majority shareholder, and I'll run my company, and you're not welcome anymore. But the brain plays tricks on you. You're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. I'm supporting my mom. I'm supporting his family. I've got all the staff. My sons are working for the company. And right now, my brain is not functioning on any level that can do a takeover. So he swore that he would prove his undying love. He would build a business, he would help, he would turn over a new leaf, he would prove this to me, and he would make these changes and tell me how I'd paid back this debt and done this and got this client on board. But now I've tapped out. My brain said, you can't deal with this, so just keep a low profile and just exist. So he went to Johannesburg on these business trips, and then he, towards the end of 2009, he said that he'd met a lady who was working for a freight company, and she would give us a lot of business. She would support us well. They were a logistics business, but they outsourced, so the turnover would be good and it would be profitable. And if we get X amount of business, this will sort our problems out. So I said, okay, credit application, because I needed to know that they wouldn't take insurance, that they would cover their own insurance, because that's a loophole in the freight industry. People can claim from you spuriously, and they do. So something can get broken or damaged in transit, and then they say, oh, I owe you 100 grand, but I can only give you 50 because you damaged my computer and it's worth 50,000 rand. So I got the credit application and I saw that they had their own insurance. They started trading, first month, 200,000, payments due, and it's not forthcoming. So I called this lady and I said, I'm closing your account because clearly you can't pay, and account's closed. So Rian sprang to her defense and he said, no, look here, this is a good account, she's good for the money, it's a big company, you saw their credit references, they'll pay. I'll take over the account, I'll manage it, I'll get the reconciliations, I'll do everything. They're going to trade, they're going to spend millions with us, it really is a good account. So against my better judgment, I agreed, and that was the biggest mistake that I ever made. So they traded and they had an affair, and they proceeded to defraud my company deliberately, both of them. So my husband and this awful, evil personified lady. But remember, now I'm not totally with it because I'm suffering from depression. So I'm just trying to cope, and this is under the radar. So, and we'll get back to that. But the account gets big, they run up a big account, I establish that they're having an affair, and now you can imagine more trauma. Because now the person that you've trusted, that you believed in, is having an affair with this woman. Now you've got to deal with ultimately divorce, which is a massive stressor. So, but you're running a business and you can't cope, you can't function, you can't work because you're dealing with a betrayal and you're trying to get evidence and you're trying to get proof of the affair. So, water break. So the account, so the fall was only in a couple of months. The big fall was only in a short space of time. Can happen very quickly. So they run up, it's peak season, they run up an account with millions. He's getting the recons, there's always a short payment. And I'd say, but Rian, they've short paid 200 grand. No, it's not a short payment. They're going to pay next month, it's not a short payment. And then next month there's a short payment, and then no. She's waiting for that money from her client, and that payment is going to be paid next month. And eventually, I didn't have privy to the recons, and all this was done sort of in a subterfuge manner. So I found out that I was paying for her staff, There were all kinds of deductions, and I said, okay, that's it. Close the account. They owe me millions. If I close the account, I stand to lose the money because they're not going to pay. But if I carry on doing the account, I'm going to lose my business anyway, because we're not making money, and clearly it's indicative of they don't want to pay. In fact, my cash flow was quite bad. So Rian said, approach the owners and say that you want a discount for payment. And under duress, I did. And they said, right, we'll pay you on presentation of statement, but we're going to take a 10% discount. So it really was a deliberate, systematic ploy to milk us and to put us out of business. But you know, when you get in too deep, it's very difficult to get out. So, and you've got to wonder, like, why would somebody get into that situation? Somebody who was such a trailblazer, dynamic entrepreneur, built this huge business. You've got to ask yourself these questions. So they didn't pay us. They owed us millions. And Rian issued nil balances on their accounts. So the liquidators couldn't recover the money. So I speak to my auditor, and she says, but I've been doing your books for years. I know this business. I'll help you get out of this. I'll take over your business. You don't even have to come into the office. I'm talking about 2010. I'll take a 50,000 Rand salary a month, and I'll take percentage of your shareholding. Yeah, I know. You're all wondering why. But desperate people do desperate things. And when your brain isn't functioning normally, you're not compos mentis. So in desperation, I agreed. Another fatal mistake. All that this woman did was make commitments that she couldn't keep. My mom had given me an early inheritance, because she was coming to live with me. So she put the proceeds of her house, which I'd asked for, she put into my business, because I was Mrs. Fix-It. I could turn the business around like I had done over all the years. So I thought, I'll fix this. I can do this. So, and I put all the money that I had, whatever I could lay my hands on, into the business. And all this clown did was make financial commitments. Then it's a conflict of interest. She wasn't allowed to be employed by us. But she knew that. So what she did is report us to the bank, because she knew now she was implicated. So the bank closed in on the overdraft. So any money that you're banking, you can't access. And that was really the final nail in the coffin. So we were forced to go into provisional liquidation. Now you must remember, this is an entrepreneur. This is a chick that could move mountains. That's now a failure. Failure was never an option. It was success at any cost, no matter what the cost, to my health, to my time, to my relationships. So now I realize you've actually just failed. After 20 years, you failed. So there goes your reputation, there goes your name, there goes your livelihood, there goes everything. So you can imagine what's going on in this pea-sized brain, not in a healthy condition. So then, to crown it all, it's like a comedy of errors. It's like a three-ring circus. So now I've lost complete control. I'm just existing from day to day. So Rian gets involved with some nefarious character, some dubious character that says, I'll take over your client base. You're going into liquidation. I'll take over your client base. And we'll change the name. We will call it, I can't remember what the name was. Perhaps you remember. Let's say ABC Couriers. So we'll trade as ABC Couriers, and we'll use our bank account. We'll just send a letter to the clients saying there's been a change of ownership. And I remember sitting in the meeting, and I remember sitting there thinking, but you should say something. This used to be your company. And I was actually powerless to say anything. I remember sitting there thinking, they were doing all the talking. And I remember sitting there thinking, but why can't you say something? And the mind was blank. So there was a rapid series of events after that. The liquidator came to see me, and he said, the first pain is the worst pain. He said to me, the first pain is the worst pain. So what he meant was that once you've made the decision to pull the plug, your pain stops, because now you don't have to stress. You don't have to worry anymore. And he looked at me and he said, shame. This is going to be hard for you. And I didn't quite know what he meant, but it was pretty hard. It was pretty tough. So from there, in June, so we're living at home. My sons have had to come back home, and we're selling items to get bread. We did have cheese, so it was bread and cheese. And the sheriff of the court's there every day, and sometimes the same sheriff for a different creditor, writing up your furniture, and I'd offer them coffee, the usual drill. Hi, how are you? Seen you yesterday. Would you like some coffee? But it's traumatic. You're trying to make the most of it, but you don't know what tomorrow brings. So on or about June of 2011, somebody called me on my cell, and they said, I've got a parcel to send. So ding dong, that triggered a bell, and I said, okay, we'll charge you, I think it was 150. We'll charge you 150 Rand cash in those days. Made a few phone calls, found a supplier who would deal with us. We still deal with them today. And he said, sure, yeah, I'll help you. And so we were in business. So the boys and I decided that we'd start a company. And they wanted to call it Freight Innovations. So I said, well, I don't really like the name Freight Innovations, but let's go with Freight Innovations. So I said, I'm not going to be an owner. I'm liquidated, I'm sequestrated. You guys run with the business. I can't be in the business because my name is trashed. Thank you. Trashed. And yeah, it's absolutely trashed, and you're persona non grata. Nobody wants to deal with you because you're a failure, and you liquidated your business, and you pocketed the money. Because most people do stash some money when they liquidate, but I was too stupid to do that, and too honest, much to my own disadvantage. So in August 2011, I'm so sorry, Rian passed away. So he had gone on to develop a cocaine habit and all sorts of nefarious activities. And he passed away, and the liquidators got 5.5 million, which kept them quiet. And it was the liquidation that exposed me to their fraud, because I had access to all the documents. That's when I could see how they colluded and how they systematically, the two of them, defrauded against me. How she duplicated insurance claims, claimed from us. There were dubious things, hijackings of computer goods that they try to hold us liable for, all inside jobs. So yeah, he passed away. So those were the stressors. Now you know why I was so wacky, or let's say dysregulated, is because the biggest stressors in your life, death, divorce, losing your job, losing your home, and several more. So I had all of those. Everything. All at once. So how could you possibly have death, divorce, liquidation, sequestration, and all the others? It was unbearable. You're like the living dead. But you recover and look at the success that we've achieved today. So Freight Innovation started on the 1st of July 2011. And yeah. No thanks to me. Thanks to my two sons, but I did play a role, obviously. But so here we go again. No money, no customers, no reputation. Nobody wants to deal with you either. But the 150 Rand was petrol money because we still had a bakkie that had gone under the radar and that hadn't been repossessed yet. So one son was the driver, the other son was operations, and then I was the sales rep, calling for business. So that's how we started. And today, Freight Innovations is a very successful company, I'm happy to tell you. So, you know, through failure, through adversity, comes strength and resilience, and you can have a full, accomplished, pleasant life. So before I close, I just want to touch on why, because you'll notice that I've ignored the elephant in the room, which is why. How would you let this happen? If you are an astute businesswoman, you're not going to allow somebody to do that to your business. So when I was doing research for this talk, it became even more apparent. So what had transpired is the years of stress and trauma, cortisol, adrenaline. So your amygdala becomes activated, which creates anxiety. So you are constantly living in a state of anxiety. Even small things will be a trigger and you'll be anxious. So this has affected your lifestyle and your cognitive ability. So over the years, then the abuse. Rian was very controlling and manipulative. He installed security cameras for security purposes, but he would watch me through the cameras and he'd phone me and say, "Oh, I see you sitting in the lounge. Oh, I see you sitting at the pool." And he would even rock up at the hairdresser. He would arrive at the hairdresser and say, if I said I was at the hairdresser, he'd say, "Oh, I just came to say hello. I was in the area." So you've been living with this kind of manipulation, and as his addiction got worse, the abuse got worse. And it's a war of attrition. So this abuse is causing cognitive impairment. So you don't have the normal cognitive capability that you would have in any other situation. So with the first exposure to the gambling, that's where. So your amygdala, let me get this right. This is just layman's terms, eh? So the amygdala becomes activated, and that triggers anxiety. Your hippocampus shrinks. So that controls your emotions and your memory. So you lose your memory. I promise you, somebody can say 1, 2, 3, 4, and you'll say, what? What did you say? I mean, people can attest. I couldn't remember four digits. That's how bad my memory was. So you are dysregulated. You've become dysfunctional. Your ancient brain, which apparently is 300,000 years old and is there to protect you, fight, flight, freeze, has gone into freeze mode to protect you. So it says, look, you can't deal with the trauma, you can't deal with what's going on. So just keep a low profile. I'll keep you in free state so that you don't have to deal with any of this. Let's just keep you in that state. So you are living, but you're not living. You're there, but you're not there. That's why I couldn't make decisions. That's why I let it get so far. So, moral of the story is, if you know anybody that's suffering from trauma, they need to get help. If I could have got help earlier, it would never have got that bad. You know that I was on my own suicide watch. I used to count the minutes, 15 minutes. And I'd say, if I can make it for the next 15 minutes, then I'll be okay. 15 minutes, 15 minutes. And so it would go on. And I know why people commit suicide, because I had made up my mind to commit suicide. And it was an absolute relief. And you shouldn't share these things with people. But the reason that I'm telling you is so that people who are suffering from trauma need to know you're not alone. You can get better. And you're not going to do it on your own. Had I got help earlier, it would be much better for me. The next few years were chronic autoimmune disease, fibromyalgia, medication with side effects, affect your brain. You're not functioning. You act weird, you say funny things, you do funny things, because you're not all there. Your brain has become dysregulated because you've suffered from too much stress. So I had 3 nervous breakdowns. This is a tough cookie. This is someone who could move mountains, who built up a business from scratch under extreme duress. 3 nervous breakdowns in a period of about 3 or 4 years. And I'd actually taken my mom to deliver her because she was so cantankerous. And I met the psychologist and I said, Dr. Carter, she's all yours. I need a break. Because he was going to treat her for depression. And he looked at me and he said, I'm not worried about your mom. I'm worried about you. You need to come and see me. And I did. And I was in a kiso 3 times, and it probably saved my life. So there you learn to re-regulate, reprogram your brain. The neuroplasticity allows new pathways to develop, because when the brain cells die, they don't regenerate. But you can lead a normal life. And in closing, just preparing for this talk triggered tremendous stress. I became dysregulated, and I had to really dig deep to do the talk, because the trauma will never go away, and something can trigger it, but you can live a perfectly normal life. Failure is an opportunity. I've got fabulous clients. Freight Innovations is successful. I've got the most beautiful friends. Our family is together. And the true riches, you know what true riches are? It's not material, and there's no monetary value. It's true friends, quality time with family, people you love, the precious things in life. And I've got all of that. So actually I owe these 2, the other one who committed fraud, and I don't know where she is, but she's still running around somewhere. The witch, the evil persona. So I actually owe them a debt of gratitude, because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have the life that I've got today. So anybody that's suffering from stress and trauma, get help. So finally, I want to close with something that Einstein said. He said, try not to be a person of success. Try to be a person of value. Thank you for sharing this time with me. Thank you. Thank you. So Al said, what would you do differently? What would the solution be Um, what I should have done was, when the gambling was exposed, I should have cut him out of the business. But still thinking, not realizing that gambling is a chronic addiction just like cocaine, alcoholism, and everything else that triggers dopamine, and you become addicted, and then it leads you into other things. And the casinos give you anything you want. So he got into lots of mischief. So Melissa asked if there was somebody that I could bounce this off, if there was a confidant. And the answer is no. Today you get life coaches, business coaches, mentors, people that help you, chartered accountants that do your budgets. I was lonely. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anybody that I could ask for advice. So, it was trial and error, and then you learn on your own. So I never had anybody that I could ask for help. And when I underwent all the stress, and I had nobody. So normally when people go through stress, death, loss of a loved one, loss of a home, you've got support. Your family and your friends will rally round and support you. I had nobody. I had to cope on my own, and that's difficult. That's tough. I did confide. I did speak to my brother, but Pat, we spoke, and for that I'm very grateful. But what I needed was like mentorship, and I appreciate the talks we had, and the fact that you get stuck in the past and you regurgitate the same information. So that's also to do with fight, flight, freeze. You get stuck in the past. So have you ever met that person that talks about the past? Oh, my husband cheated on me and life's so bad. And you hear that all the time? That's somebody who's stuck in the past. And if you don't get help, you'll stay in the past. I was also sworn to secrecy. He said, you may never tell anybody about this incident, the gambling incident. So I had this heavy burden, this terrible thing that I wasn't allowed to tell. You're terribly embarrassed. It's not like you're going to run around with a placard saying, I'm liquidated. And remember, fraudsters don't wear a badge. It's all subterfuge. And I also had a defamation case that I can't go into too much detail about. But at this traumatic time, I had a defamation case that I lost. But anybody who's been defendant in the High Court, that you've got to prepare for, it's daunting. I thought that people would want to save time and that you could do things for people locally, but it didn't work. But there were people doing local deliveries, and then of course the upcountry ones, but local is very small. So we veered off into upcountry, and then I had my own links. The big 36-ton trucks? I had those as well. Thank you so much.